Welcome back, everyone. So that other video that I had up, it didn't have me in full frame, and I was really disappointed about that because it made me look ridiculous. Cut the top of my head off. But that's besides the point. I will be playing with both mics in this video as well, and that's besides the point too. This one is about a Reader's Digest article that is attacking the concept of marijuana legalization. I noticed that they use an argument from authority, a gross overgeneralization. They kind of use jibe and jargon in the sense that they're using pictures and expecting people, they're not really expecting, but I think they're kind of banking on like, oh, look at this activity over here. And most people don't even know what that means. I think they do something where they try to explain, like, it disrupts this system of the brain. Well, of course it does. That's the nature of any given substance we put in our brains, including this. Oh, that's so good. So, where to begin? Let's dive into the article. We'll just start there. So, let's hop to it. Here's the article. I don't know what I'll do. Maybe shrink the screen or something. I don't know. All right, so here's the article. Everyone praises the healing power of this drug, but many don't realize the damaging effect it has on teens. Okay. As the states loosen their marijuana laws, a doctor warns that the drug can be addictive and harmful to younger minds. These days, it's decidedly uncool to criticize marijuana and the rush toward legalization. So far, 30 states and the District of Columbia allow medical marijuana, while 9 states and D.C. permit recreational use. 61% of Americans say they believe the drug should be legal, according to a recent Pew Research Center survey. But underscoring this incredible momentum for legalization is the misconception that marijuana can't hurt anybody. Well, I mean, it does have carbon. It just you have the tar and stuff. It can, especially in young people. I think that's supposed to say in young people. The myth that cannabis, another name for the plant, you can tell that this is obvious. Like, if you have to say that, this is intended for people who don't know anything about it, is not habit forming. It can be habit forming, but that's not what you're gonna profess, is it? Is constantly challenged by physicians. There's no question at all that marijuana's addictive, Sharon LeVay, MD, tells me. This is argument from authority. She is the director of the Adolescent Substance Abuse Program at Boston Children's Hospital, one of a few programs designed to preemptively identify substance use problems in teens. And I have a problem with that right from the get-go. Substance abuse use, problems in teens. That's hard to really say at that point. Anyone can get hooked. But about 1 of every 6 teens who smoke marijuana will become addicted. Okay, so like in this small little research group that Sharon LeVay, MD, is working out of, the people that come to her are like troubled teens that make a lot of really bad decisions because, I don't know, maybe they're teens. And in this research group that she has, every 6 teens who smoke marijuana. So 6 out of what? That's inaccurate statistic. That is biased statistic reporting right there. Every 6 teens who smoke. Every 6 teens out of her particular field. The particular people that she's working with. Every 6 of them is addicted. These are the silent signs your teen is struggling with drug addiction. One of Dr. Levy's patients was an 18-year-old who started smoking pot several times a day in 10th grade. She dropped out of high school, was fired from several jobs, and stole money from her parents. Okay, but we're not going to talk about the, 80% of teens who do the same thing, do not drop out of high school, do not get fired from their jobs. We're not going to talk about that. We're just going to talk about the ones that she runs into that happen to do this. Fantastic. She and her family were at their wits and trying to find appropriate treatment in a healthcare system that doesn't consider addiction to marijuana a serious problem, because it's not. Dr. LeVay says, "We are simply not prepared for the fallout of marijuana legalization." What about alcohol? You gonna tell me that alcohol is not addictive? It's the only fucking substance known to man where the withdrawals alone, just the withdrawals, I mean, you can overdose on it and it'll kill you, but the withdrawals, if you become physically dependent upon this stuff, can kill you. That's alcohol. The withdrawals from marijuana, the only studies that we can find of any withdrawals from marijuana is you might have like a week where it's like hard to sleep. That's it. That's the extent of it. Teens who frequently smoke pot were less likely to hold full-time jobs as adults. Well, that's deeply inaccurate. And that's the other thing about this study that I don't like, is I know this is full of shit, because the United States still considers marijuana to be a Schedule I narcotic. And if marijuana is being federally considered a Schedule I narcotic, even in the states that have it legalized, it's still federally illegal. They cannot legally conduct a thorough study. It's not possible. And the countries that have done studies on marijuana because their governments allow them to, they are not coming up with the same information that you are. So we do know that there is sort of a withdrawal symptom if you're smoking 10 times a day, which is excessive. That's an excessively large amount of weed smoking. You're going to have a difficult time going to sleep for a week. Just a small amount. It's not like, oh my God, I totally can't sleep. It's like, well, I had a little bit of trouble getting to sleep. That's it. And the other thing is that, well, the teens who frequently smoke pot are less likely to hold full-time jobs as adults. Citation is needed for that, because there are tons of frequent marijuana smokers that have held jobs for 20 fucking years. So what are you talking about? What are you talking about? Where do you get this bullshit? Okay, yet we do not hear this perspective very often. Why not? Because it's bullshit. People strongly defend marijuana because they don't want legalization to be derailed, says Jody Gilman, PhD, an assistant. Oh, I'm so glad you have a PhD and not an MD license. Funny how it's PhDs doing this and not MDs. An assistant professor at Harvard Medical School with the Center for Addiction Medicine. Big money is at stake. Yeah, we know that marijuana creates a lot of revenue, which is one of the reasons we should legalize it. Last year, teen marijuana use went up significantly for the first time in 7 years. I think it's been up, like, they did polls where it said like 98% of Americans have at least tried it. I think of that you can take this little snippet that you just said right here and shove it up your ass. According to a large annual study conducted by the University of Michigan, the latest national survey on drug use and health, completed in 2016, also showed an increase, while tobacco and alcohol use continue to decrease. Well, those are legal. That's interesting, isn't it? If you go into a high school and ask the classroom, are cigarettes harmful? Is alcohol harmful? Every kid raises their hand, Gilman says. But if I ask, is marijuana harmful? Not a hand goes up. Well, there's not a lot of harmful side effects to marijuana. Again, like maybe halitosis, you're getting exposed to some carcinogens if you're smoking it, but if you're vaping it, you're not. There's not been really any studies that suggest that it does any real permanent damage to the brain. In fact, it can actually slow down and even prevent things like Alzheimer's and dementia. Like, yeah, I'm not going to deny that it's not entirely healthy. It can. We do know this. If you have a mood disorder where you have delusions of grandeur, it can exacerbate that. But it's also not very good for anxiety unless it's sativa. Sativas are good at treating anxiety. Indicas are better with other things. Well, I don't know the sativas or the indicas. The indicas might be really good with anxiety, and the sativas not. One of them will exacerbate anxiety. Not both, though. And they actually specifically breed marijuana with an indica-sativa ratio specifically to treat anxiety now. And it's like one of the most effective mood stabilizers that we've really come across that isn't, that doesn't have this. You want to talk about ill side effects? Let's talk about the ill side effects. Well, we're not. I'm just going to mention it. The side effects of SSRIs are way, way worse. Way worse than if you were to use marijuana as a mood stabilizer as opposed to an SSRI. I mean, way worse. We're talking muscular dystrophy, just death. Just death. And the other thing that people experience with SSRIs and mood stabilizers, antidepressants, and antipsychotics is what's called emotional dysphoria, where they feel kind of removed from their own emotions and don't feel like themselves. This is not the case with marijuana. Fuck this article. Okay. I mean, there's some harmful side effects, but they're not big deals. In fact, more than half of a 10th and 12th graders say they believe pot isn't dangerous, according to a report from the Rand Corporation, a nonpartisan research organization. God, they're nonpartisan research. But fuck that, we're going to toss that out the window because we have our agenda to push. That is an unintended consequence of legalization. Okay, thank you for your opinion. That is not a fact. That is your opinion. You have nothing to base this statement off of an unintended consequence of legalization. A RAND consultant told NPR, or maybe it is intended. Pot proponents often argue that one reason to legalize a drug is so its dosage and potency can be regulated. Well, you can also regulate who buys it. You know, if it stays on the underground market, they don't exactly care about asking for ID, do they? You might compare public perception now to the way people used to feel about tobacco in the 1950s. No, no, no. I just said it has fucking carcinogens in it, you half-wit. Nearly half of Americans smoked tobacco. Meanwhile, the big tobacco companies aggressively use their lobbying. There's hardly any marijuana lobbying power. This has been a fight from the people. This is grassroots fighting that has been going on. Seriously, fuck you. To deceive the public about the harms of smoking and to forestall regulation by the Food and Drug Administration. Of course, now we know that tobacco causes cancer, heart disease, and other health problems, and cigarette packaging carries mandatory warnings. So why can't we do that with marijuana? We can have mandatory warnings on pot stores. Why the fuck not? Teen brain on pot. The ingredient in marijuana that produces the high tetrahydrocannabinol, THC. It's also a medicinal ingredient responsible for muting the effects of chronic pain, nausea, mood disorders, and other ailments. You're pissing on your own feet by putting this here. Over the decades, some marijuana strains have been bred to contain more THC, and they do list CBD, okay, and less of the substance that lessens the high called cannabinoids, CBDs. Because the THC concentrations have grown stronger, today's weed might well be 40 times more potent than the grass of the 1970s. And they show a picture of a teen brain on pot. When young people smoke marijuana, their brains change. The red and yellow areas above indicate abnormal growth in the nucleus accumbens, the part of the brain that affects motivation and learning. Well, when you're on marijuana, that affects motivation and learn. It's not going to affect motivation and learning. Okay. So, motivation, okay, there's multiple parts of the brain that control motivation. This is something that has to do with the pleasure center and the reward center. This could have to do with mood disorders. There's a lot of plethora of things that go into what affects motivation and learning, okay? What pot messes with in the brain is coordination and it's short-term memory. It actually... That's why it actually helps with dementia and Alzheimer's and preventing it, because it helps you retain long-term memory. Because even though your short-term memory is shot when you're high, when you're not high anymore, you can still remember what happened. It's very interesting. It's actually an exercise that RNs and stuff use with dementia and Alzheimer's patients. So to bring balance to a narrative driven by pro-legalization campaigns, Gilman and others are interested in leveraging data to show pot's real effects in 2014. Where are you going to do this? You can't do clinical tests in the United States. It is illegal. You can't do it. The differences in brain's reward system between users and non-users. Teens who smoke marijuana had significant abnormalities in the areas of the brain linked to emotion, motivation, and decision-making. See diagram above. Look at this tiny little dot. We're going to get into that in a minute. Okay, so I think we get what is this? It's worth bearing in mind that it was science that eventually curtailed the power of big tobacco. Okay, well, what the fuck? We're not trying to make tobacco illegal either, so fuck you. I don't think tobacco should be illegal. I don't think alcohol should be illegal. But let's fucking be honest about it, okay? You do not have anything to go off of studies because you can't study it in a clinical way. You can't have an actual control. You can't have people come in to a facility and say, okay, smoke this weed, and then we're going to test all these different things and look at your brain and all that sort of shit. We can't do it because it's illegal federally. So even the states that have it legal, they still can't conduct these fucking studies. There's actually neurologists that have complained about this. I cannot believe this made it to Reader's Digest. That is amazing to me. That this is a doctor, well, not barely a doctor, a PhD, that's pissed off because she hates marijuana, she doesn't want it legalized, and she's trying to demonize it. And that's fine. You know what? There's negative aspects to marijuana. That's fine. You can plaster it all over the shit if you have to. That's not going to stop people. And certainly, keeping it illegal isn't stopping, and it's not working either. They're still doing it. Fucking shit. Unfucking believable. I hate these people. It just pisses me off. He's just so full of shit. All right, so after that, we like looking at that brain image. I just wanted to show you guys other brain images that we don't know anything about that will scare the shit out of us. And I think you'll find it really surprising, the things that I looked up and the things that I found. So let's have a look at that. This here, we have pictures of the brain on caffeine. You can see there's a lot more highlighted in red. Come to find out, eventually it... brain disease that can't, well, it essentially it cuts off oxygen to the brain. I find that interesting. Low users, moderate users, high users, placebo, and actual caffeine. You can see the effects there of that. So you could almost say that caffeine affects the brain worse than the little diagram of marijuana that we saw. Before caffeine, after 40% less blood flow after drinking caffeine. And here is the brain on MDMA or ecstasy. Oh, that's just something silly. So we have a control, MDMA, ex-MDMA, showing that the effects that MDMA has on the brain are permanent. You have like the configuration, the neocortex, hypothalamus, hippocampus, all that. We have some other brain scans here. So this is obviously more harmful than marijuana, and the brain lights up. So there we have that as well. So here we can see the brain on acetaminophen, Tylenol. Tylenol does more harm to the brain than marijuana. And this is something that's sold over the counter to adults and children alike. I don't think you even need a fucking ID card to get Tylenol. And apparently Tylenol has an effect on the brain that can cause seizures. Isn't that wonderful? Now, this next slide, this next thing that I have is the brain on alcohol. Look at all the fucking red. And, you know, this is legal too. So, what was the point of all that? Was this just fear-mongering? So, there's some brain scans for you. And to wrap this up is I had just this article just irritated the ever-loving fuck out of me. Because I know that they can't do a legitimate study. Like a real legitimate study from the foundation of science, how it's supposed to be done. We're not looking for what we want. We're not looking for confirmation bias. We're looking for the information, it is what it is type information. Where we have a test group come in, a control group, we have placebo, non-placebo, we have neurologists involved, psychologists involved, we have a list of questions where we ask them, what are the side effects? Every single side effect they list, we have to write that down. Even the placebo. If the placebo matches the real thing, the placebo effect is, well, obviously it's probably not a real side effect. But if all the people on the real shit are reporting the same side effect and the people taking the placebo aren't, that's probably more indicative of a real side effect. They have all kinds of different structure that they have to go through to prove what these things actually do, what they actually are, how it actually does interact with the brain, what the actual negative ramifications are. And I've already mentioned some. You are exposed to carcinogens, which can, that can cause lung cancer. But the thing is that if you're smoking 10 times a day, you're more likely to get it than if you're just a normal pot smoker that smokes it maybe like once, 3 times a day. And even then, still, if you smoke it once or 3 times a day, you're still ingesting less carcinogens than you would if you were a cigarette smoker, because the average cigarette smoker smokes a lot of cigarettes. And there's the less additives, like tobacco manufacturers put sugar and extra nicotine and weird fucked up chemicals into the cigarette. Your cigarette's only 2% fucking tobacco. I don't know if you know that. It's only 2% fucking tobacco. The rest is fillers. So it's what, 98% fucking filler and only 2% actual tobacco. So that hasn't been done to weed. The only thing that we've done to weed is, well, we have, there's the oil. I don't do the oil. I don't like the oil. I don't touch it. It's like the difference between distilled and brewery. I mean, like, if you want to go hard alcohol, some people do that. Some people just like their brewery. I mean, it just depends. And personally, I would stick with the nugs. I really like the nugs. And once you get to a certain percentage of THC, you're just kind of at the point where you're wasting it, because you can only get so high, and then you just can't get any high anymore. You can't get higher. There's no such thing as that. It doesn't exist. And especially when you've been smoking weed for, like, let's say as long as I have. And that's the other thing. When I see an article like that, I am a person that has done heroin, I've done crack, I've done coke, I've done meth. I have been addicted to real hardcore shit. So when I see an article out there that says marijuana's addictive, I'm like, bitch, please. You don't even know what addiction is if you think marijuana's addictive. Trust me, I've felt the burn of addiction. Okay? No. Stop this fucking fear-mongering campaign. I cannot believe you, Reader's Digest, that you would publish an article that stupid people, they're not stupid, they're uneducated, they don't know anything about marijuana. You're feeding a confirmation bias against marijuana. The biggest lobbyist we have is what? Fucking normal? That's it. The people have been barking about this since the goddamn 60s to get it legalized. Pretty much the day it became legal, there was already a group of people pushing to have it undone to make it legal again. What the hell? Yeah, there's negative ramifications. I've listed some. If you have delusions of grandeur, it can exacerbate it. So if you have schizophrenia, you probably shouldn't smoke weed. I'm not opposed to having the idea of being 21 and older. I'm not opposed to saying, hey, this has carcinogens, it might cause cancer. I'm not opposed to these ideas. What I'm opposed to is spewing bullshit to try and make it so people want to keep it illegal, because it being illegal has nothing to do with who uses it. In fact, making it legal, you might see a decline, just like we have with alcohol and tobacco, of teen use. Think about that. Oh, shit. And there's really no point in increasing the THC level. Like some people are doing that. There's literally like getting 24, almost 30 fucking percent THC, and there's literally no fucking goddamn point in that. Like, take one hit. I guess it'll reduce the amount that you smoke, because you take one hit and it's like, oh, I'm fucking stoned. I'm good now. Ugh. I hate these moral busybodies trying to make... The answer to all of our problems is just make everything illegal. Because that's worked out so fucking well, hasn't it? Marijuana is illegal in certain states. They're still using it. The problem is that when you make it illegal across the board, well, then the drug cartel just fucking smuggle it here. People grow it in their closet, and then you've got a bunch of fucking people in prison for smoking a goddamn plant that might give you cancer by the time you're fucking 80, which we already have one legalized called tobacco that has no psychoactive fucking effects other than it being a fucking central nervous system stimulant. Ugh! I'm sorry. I got irritated there. Just very, very irritated. But I find it interesting that some really mundane things that we don't even think about, when we look at them under a brain scan, well, it turns out they do more fucking damage to the brain than fucking weed does. Like I said, that image was just them peeing on their own feet. I had to make this because, to me, I was like, okay, there's fallacies written all over this. There hasn't been a study done in the United States, not an effective one, not one that we could legitimately call science. There hasn't been one. Because it's still illegal on the federal level. They still consider it a Schedule I narcotic. And that's ridiculous. I'm fine if you want to put warning labels. I'm fine if you want to have the age to be 21 to buy it. I'm fine with all that. That's called regulation. That's fine. I'm fine with it. What I'm not fine with is, let's say you have... I knew a woman, how old was she? She was fucking old as shit. She was like in the 70s, 80s, smoked marijuana since she was like... a little girl, well, not a little girl, but like, let's say 17, a 3-pack a day smoker too. She never got fucking lung cancer. Can you believe this? She got breast cancer. She didn't even get lung cancer. She got breast cancer. I imagine, no matter how healthy you try to be, your body just tends to fall apart no matter what you do. But this woman, I can't imagine sending a woman who's a breast cancer survivor, who smokes marijuana to ease her pain and to deal with fucking life, sending her to fucking prison because this PhD doesn't like pot. That's absurd. Yeah, you're gonna have dipshits doing it. I hate the whole, guilt by association thing. Well, this person dropped out of school, they don't maintain a job, they commit in criminal activity, and they smoked weed. Okay, that's guilt by association. We could do that with media, we could do that with the music they listen to, we could do that with the video games that they play, we could do that all day with all kinds of fucking stuff. But we don't do that, because we know it's a logical fallacy, right? Well, apparently that PhD doesn't realize that. So, no, just because a person smokes weed is just a fuck up of a person doesn't mean it's the marijuana's fault. What we're ignoring here is a very large percentage of people that are very functional that are habitual marijuana smokers. We ignore that right off. Seriously, I know lawyers and fucking doctors that smoke weed. Seriously. That PhD can go fuck herself. Hard. Anyway, let me know what you think in the like. Oh my god, this seriously. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell button on any channel you're subscribed to. With that, out, motherfuckers!